Since I cover both history and Star Wars content on my channel, as well as various other things, I thought it would be fun to dive into some of the military veterans who produced and acted in Star Wars throughout the decades. First up is Gary Curts, the producer of Star Wars A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, was an enlisted combat cameraman during the Vietnam War in the United States Marine Corps from 1966 to 1969. He would be deployed to Vietnam, and during his combat duty as a Marine, he carried an empty sidearm and opted not to bring his pistol into battle with his cameras. Star Wars cinematographer Gilbert Taylor served 6 years in World War II as an officer in the Royal Air Force Volunteer Reserve. He became an operational cameraman flying in Arvo Lancaster bombers, documenting the damage after British bombing raids against the Germans. Taylor recalled that it was requested by Winston Churchill that his material was delivered to 10 Downing Street for him to view. He was keen for the public to see what the British were doing against the Germans for morale purposes, as the Battle of Britain was devastating. He did 10 of these operations, including raids on Cologne and Dresden. He would also take operational camera units into France and Germany to cover whatever he could, and it would turn out that he would end up filming the liberation of concentration camps as well as the armistice that ended World War II. Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original trilogy, served in the Royal Navy during World War II. He enlisted in 1941 and received a temporary commission to sub-lieutenant in April of 1942 and a promotion to lieutenant the next year. Guinness then commanded a landing craft of infantry at the Allied invasion of Sicily in Operation Husky. Later, he ferried supplies and Allied intelligence agents to Yugoslav partisans in the Eastern Mediterranean theater. James Earl Jones was an ROTC cadet in college and excelled in the program as he enjoyed the military structure and environment. As he felt that he would be deploying to the Korean War, he decided to study drama and acting in his junior year, which he excelled at. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in mid-1953, right after the end of the war. Jones reported to Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, for Infantry Bullock, and attended Ranger School, receiving his Ranger tab. Jones was assigned to HHC in the 38th Regimental Combat Team. He was initially to report to Fort Leonard Wood, but his unit was instead sent to establish a cold weather training command at the former Camp Hal near Leadville, Colorado. His battalion became a training unit in the rugged terrain of the Rocky Mountains, and Jones was promoted to first lieutenant prior to his discharge in 1955. Irvin Kersner was the director of Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Kersner studied at the Settlement Music School there before serving in the Army Air Forces as the flight engineer on a B-24 bomber during World War II. Post-war, he would work as a photographer for the State Department film crew in Iran. This led him to directing several documentaries in the Middle East and Europe for the United States Information Services. Julian Glover, who played General Veers in The Empire Strikes Back, performed national service in the British Army, where he went to officers' training course. It was in the Army where Glover decided that he was supposed to become an actor, as while attending the course, he was at the bottom of his class and decided to act the part of being an officer, where he would boss others around, hoping that he was being perceived as sympathetic, but not tolerating mistakes. This approach worked out well for him, as he stated that this method led him to coming out on top. Actor Jack McKenzie, who played Rebel Deck Lieutenant Kyle Alder on Hoth, joined the British Royal Marines at the age of 15 and served for 4 years. Additionally, many of the Rebel soldier extras in the Battle of Hoth were Norwegian military mountain rescue skiers, and as a thank you for filming, George Lucas made a sizable donation to the Norwegian Red Cross. Michael Shred, who played Admiral Ozzel, served in the Royal Air Force as an aircraftman, which is basically an E-1 during his time in Britain's national service. He was also roommates with Donald Sutherland in Scotland, which I found pretty interesting. Sebastian Shaw, who played Darth Vader in Return of the Jedi, had previously been an actor in the 1930s, and when the Second World War broke out, he joined the Royal Air Force. On the 25th of April, 1941, he was commissioned as an acting pilot officer on probation in the Administrative and Special Duties branch, and over the next 3 months, he was speedily promoted to pilot officer on probation, flying officer, and then flight lieutenant. Shaw saw little action and was told that the only chance that he would have to fly would be as a rear gunner. He continued to hold a Royal Air Volunteer Reserve commission after the war until his resigning of his commission on the 10th of February 1954, where he was permitted to retain his rank. Christopher Lee is a legendary veteran and actor who portrayed Count Dooku in the Star Wars prequels. I have already made a video about Lee's military experience, so I'll just hit the highlights here. He was a British volunteer for Finland during the Winter War, joined the British Army for a little bit, shifted to the RAF, became the RAF's intelligence liaison to the long-range desert group in North Africa, and he served in Italy. After the war, he hunted Nazi war criminals and left the military in 1946 as a flight lieutenant. Adam Driver, who played Kylo Ren in the sequel trilogy, was an enlisted man in the Marine Corps. Shortly after the September 11th terrorist attacks, Driver enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, where he was assigned to a weapons company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, as an 81mm mortar man. Driver was so enthusiastic and impatient about getting into the Marines that his recruiter actually thought that he might have had a criminal past, which I found kind of funny. He served for 2 years and 8 months before breaking his sternum while mountain biking shortly before his unit deployed to Iraq, which pretty much disappointed him, and he was medically discharged at the rank of Lance Corporal. Those are all of the veterans who made the Star Wars saga that we all know and for the most part love today. Did you know about the service of all of these men? Are there any that I left out? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.